10 seconds.
Is this where the damn drumming and the music kicks in?
Yeah. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, good evening. Whenever you're listening to me right now, I hope that it's a good one. Today is Tuesday, July 21st, 2020, and that means it is another episode of OTP Tuesdays coming live at you in your face. I'm your host, as always, Tyler Shepardson, and want to say thank you all for joining me here. It's a little bit late on a Tuesday night. It's been a heck of a day for me. Yesterday I was about worthless. We were back to full gas sprint enduro racing. Yes, round number 2 in the middle of July. It's been 160 days since we went full gas racing, and I was glad to be back. I was there announcing. I wasn't at the first round, and I was back at this round. So it's almost been a year since I was at a full gas. It was last September was our last round at the beginning of September. So, I mean, we're just 2 months shy of September right now, really a month and a half. So it's really been almost a year since I was back at a full gas enduro. So I was just about useless yesterday. And then today, dealing with all sorts of stuff. I am recording this at 11:30 at night, coming fresh off of 4 straight top 10 games of Warzone with myself, Josh Strang, Dylan Riddle, and Trey Edwards. We were playing some quads, some Battle Royale quads. Every single game in the top 10. Pretty pumped. I think we had 2 top 5s. Our last game, we had 23 kills. We're getting there. It's become quite the go-to on the weekend, or during the week now, is getting on some Call of Dudes with... I guess it doesn't sound right when you say Call of Dudes, because then it's dudes. Anyway, playing some Call of Duty, some Warzone. Me, Strang, and Riddle, we tend to be a pretty solid squad every single week. So, yeah, got finished with that. That was my way to unwind and relax after a long day, and now we are recording the podcast, but enough of that. We're going to get straight into it. Tonight's show, I got some good stuff coming at you, what I think is some good stuff. I've really been talking back and forth with some friends, been mulling it all over, trying to figure out what direction to take the podcast, and I think we're close to going off the deep end. Yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. First of all, I want to say thank you all for listening, but I also want to say thank you for our wonderful intro that we have going on there at the beginning. I've said it time and time again. It was recorded in the original place that this podcast started by one of our original co-hosts, Devin Byram. That's Devin Byram on the drums, playing that intro, and then on the guitar, writing that guitar melody and playing the guitar. And that was Justin Hill, a former 250 West Coast Supercross champion. So awesome to have those boys playing in the intro as always, and I still think it's a pretty cool thing. So, yep, that's where we're at on that. Also want to say a big thanks as always to our buddies over at Armored Graphics. Armored Graphics, longtime supporter of the show. They've been here since day one. They are part of the reason that we even started a podcast and has been supporting us ever since then. So check them out, armoredgraphics.com. They have a brand new website. They're uploading stuff periodically, so putting a little bit new stuff on there at all times. So if you go today, you might go back next week and something new is on there and something's different, so it gives you a reason to keep going back. armoredgraphics.com, or follow them on the social medias at Armored Graphics, and it's no longer with an X. Graphics is spelled right. Also, the other thing, I can't read my handwriting here. I don't know what that says. I think it says first. Anyway, also, today was the Full Gas highlight video. It was filmed and edited by Mason Rader, and I did the voiceover on it as well. So that's actually what spent took up a good part of my afternoon after work today was getting that voiceover done and ready and over to Mason. So you can check that out now. That is on Full Gas's YouTube page, and there's a link to it on their Instagram, I do believe, and also on their Facebook. But it's pretty cool. Highlights the weekend, recaps the last round, and I don't know, it's cool to see those videos come back out, and it's cool to see my voice on them. Like I said, I missed round one. It's been a year since the last round last year. All the videos last year were my voiceovers on them, so I don't know. I just think it's pretty cool to log on to those videos and see what a creative mind like Mason Rader can do to capture the entire weekend. And my small contribution is on there as well, so you can check that out. I think, you can definitely just go on YouTube and search Full Gas Sprint Enduro, and it's going to pop up. But yeah, Hidden Valley Golf Course. We were racing on a golf course once again. But we're going to get to Full Gas here in a minute. I want to start things off in a little bit weird way. I guess it's not that weird. Today is July 21st, what would have been Robin Williams' 69th birthday. So I've actually seen a lot of stuff going on the interwebs with Robin Williams quotes and just talking about his life. And one of the ones that kind of hit at a right time and just kind of something to think about says, it's a Robin Williams quote that I saw someone post. It says, "Don't associate yourself with toxic people. It's better to be alone and love yourself than surrounded by people that make you hate yourself." Now, that's an interesting quote and how he presented it, and I've actually seen a lot of people attacking it and going after it and like, oh, if I'm going to take life advice, I'm not going to take it from someone who ultimately ended up killing themselves. Which, I mean, if you think about it and you take it out of the air like that, then, I mean, yeah, obviously everyone has their own demons, and so everyone has their own stuff that they're going to. But if you do a quick Google search and find out anything about Robin Williams' death, he actually had what was called Lewy body dementia, which is a form of dementia. It's also linked to schizophrenia, linked to Alzheimer's. So it's actually a mental, I guess you would call it a mental disorder or disability or an issue with mental health that ended up being the downfall of Robin Williams. But that whole thing was kind of weird because he was one of those polarizing people that really had a lot of fans and made a lot of impacts and made a lot of people laugh and did a lot of good things in the world. So it is this would have been his 69th birthday, like I mentioned. So just wanted to bring that up. And at the end of the day, I mean, mental health awareness and mental health in general is obviously a big topic in today's day and age. And yeah, that's just wanted to touch on that because Robin Williams, I mean, yeah, it was pretty weird to see someone that you think is that happy and you see it from the outside perspective and don't really know what's going on and don't really know what stuff that they're facing to have news like that come out when he did take his own life. And I mean, that's right around the time that Chris Cornell took his own life, and then the lead singer of Linkin Park, Chester Bennington, I'm drawing a blank right now, but Chester took his life too. And it all kind of happened like all in that weird little spurt, and the same thing among all of them is that everything was fine, everything was good, and then all of a sudden they decide to take their own life. And I didn't mean to go off on that tangent. Mainly just wanted to touch on that Robin Williams quote because I thought it was a good one. Anywho, we are going to transition into this weekend. A lot of racing going on this weekend and a lot of rumors coming out, and I'm going to get into some of those rumors here in the future as well. But first of all, I'm going to touch on the Bad Medicine Extreme Enduro happening, I think it was in Pennsylvania. I wish I could talk more about it, but I don't know much about it. But Cody Webb on that factory Sherco machine goes and grabs the win up there. We saw Cody come out and race at Camp Coker GNCC, and then he also went and won the Tough Like Roar. So Tough Like Roar and Bad Medicine, both part of this newly formed American Hard Enduro series. So Cody Webb obviously agreeing with the Sherco a lot more than other people that we know that have been on that Sherco machine. So it's cool to see Cody jumping on it and really seeing the success and picking up right where he left off. He took most of last year off with an injured knee, got that fixed up, and these were his first 2 races back in his own discipline, and he grabs the win at both of them. So I think that's awesome out of Cody Webb. He comes in, grabs that win. Tristan Hart was second place, and Colton Haker was in third place. I guess it was a pretty tight race. I saw a lot of Instagram stories of some of the parts of the tracks and all the rocks and the hills and stuff that they're riding. Those rocks are no joke. I don't see how they do it. I know Cody Webb is like 8'12", and so those long legs help him a lot getting through those rocks. Just to watch him kind of hop, skip, and jump over some stuff that would take me 3 hours to get up is really impressive. I want to go see some of that in person and really see what the hard enduro thing is all about. For those of you that do know me and follow me or anything like that, I'm actually racing a hard enduro event. It's actually part of the American Hard Enduro. It's Brushy Mountain Motorsports Park. They're doing the Battle of the Goats. So that is on August 1st. I'll be racing that one on my 1999 KDX 220. Got to get that thing running right before now and then, but I'll be out there then. If I don't make the main event on the second day, then I guess I'll get my chance to go watch them boys that actually do hard enduro for a living, watch and see how they do it. Also interesting to know, if you go to Cody Webb's Instagram profile, and I have no idea why it says this, but it says Factory Hobby Rider. So it's got Sherco tag, and it says Factory Hobby Rider. So I wish I could be a world champion at a hobby of mine. But I guess dirt bike riding is just a hobby, and he's a factory hobby rider. But anyway, Cody Webb takes that bad medicine win on that Factory 1 Sherco machine. Tristan Hart in second, Colton Haker in third. Now, we were back to full gas sprint enduro racing, back in full swing. I mentioned earlier, I did the math when I was doing the highlight video stuff, and realized that it was 160 days since round 1. So since round 1 of Full Gas ended, it's been 160 days. Round 2 was still scheduled and still supposed to happen. If you guys remember, round 2 got canceled the original round 2 got canceled due to rain. I think it was a new piece of property, and they were down there setting it up, and half of it was underwater, and it was just unbraceable, and they weren't able to make it happen. But I think little did Hooper know at the time that canceling round 2 then would turn into a 160-day layoff due to COVID-19 and all that stuff happening. So between weather and between COVID, it's been a long time since we went full gas sprint enduro racing, and it was so cool to be back. I was just happy to be there. Like I mentioned, I missed the first round, and so after the first round, I got a lot of texts and calls and messages like, hey, where were you at? And this round, I think, one, being removed from it for so long, I just forgot of how the weekend went and how big of a family that Full Gas Sprint Enduro family is, because I know we talk about off-road being a family and like GNCC being a family, but Full Gas is like a completely different thing because that's a completely different series. Like, there's a lot of people that typically only race moto that now they come out and race full gas, and they don't race GNCCs, and they don't race Mid-East, and they don't race the local series. They race full gas. And there's a lot of people that only race the full gas series, and obviously there's still some GNCC people and local people from the Virginia series. They're all coming out there, but it's cool the following. It's almost, I don't want to say a cult following, but it's cool the following that Jason Hooper has developed with the Full Gas Sprint Enduros, because it is such a unique series and no one was doing it when he started it. Obviously, you got some Sprint Enduro series popping up. You got J-Day doing some sprints. You got Sprint Hero out west. Billy Schlag, who has never missed a Full Gas Sprint Enduro test. Not even just a weekend or anything. Never missed a test. Dude got knocked out on a mountain bike. He still raced every single test. This past weekend, he shredded his tire, lost like 6 minutes in the first test of the weekend, and the times are cumulative. You lose 6 minutes on the first test, you're done for the weekend. You're not getting on the podium. You're not getting a win. You're not doing any of that. Billy did that on the first round, and he still went out there and raced every single other round and actually gained some time and finished third place on the day for day 2, I'm pretty sure. But he started a thing called the Sprint Cross Series, I believe is what they call it. It's up in the Baltimore area, greater Baltimore area. They do some sprint enduros. They also do some hare scrambles. I don't know what they do, but I know they definitely do some sprints and some cross-country stuff. So there are sprint enduros popping up, but when Hooper started it, this was the only series like it in America. And the whole reasoning behind it is it's set up with the format that ISDE is set up. And ever since Hooper started this series, that's when we've had all this success overseas as an American team at the ISDE, and I don't think it's a coincidence. I mean, it's easy to try to blame it on being a coincidence. There's no way it's a coincidence that since the Full Gas Series have started, America had never had an overall ISDE champion before in 90 some odd years that we've been running it, and now since Full Gas has been around, we've had 2 individual overall champions and 2 trophy team world championships. And this past year, I mean, the trophy team won gold. The junior trophy team got silver barely. Like they were in contention for the win, ended up getting silver. The women's team won, and the club team dominated the club teams. So I think it is absolutely no coincidence that since Full Gas Sprint Enduro has been around, that we've seen that success at the ISDE, because all of those ISDE trophy team riders, besides Taylor Robert, are Sprint Enduro racers. They race the series and all former champions. And that's not a coincidence. So it's cool to be back around it. And the point that I was getting at is it was a new series. It allowed the whole cross test, so you got the whole field section, so people that are good at moto, they can come out there and do good at. Look at Ryan Sipes. Ryan Sipes dominated these sprint enduros. Every time he shows up to one, he wins. The last round last year, was at Chestnut Corner in South Carolina. Ryan Sipes shows up with FIM spec tires, and so he's running his ISDE bike. He's on a 250 with ISDE spec tires, and he overalled the sprint enduro. I mean, Caleb walked his way to a title last year, dominated pretty much everybody every round. Josh Toth beat him at a round, but other than that, Caleb won every other round, and Ryan Sipes shows up and beats him on ISDE tires. And the reason that he does that is Ryan Sipes will not be as fast as you in the woods. He will not be the fastest guy in the woods. I have seen him win some enduro tests. There are some fast enduro tests, but the Ryan Sipes method to winning full gases is I'm going to beat you by 15 seconds in the cross test, and then I'm going to lose to you by 12 seconds in the woods. If you're doing the math at home, that's 3 seconds every 2 rounds. So between the cross and the enduro, you do that 6 times, 6 times 3, 18 seconds. You got an 18 seconds padding that you can work with throughout the weekend. And granted, he wasn't beating everybody by 15 seconds, but he is the cross test killer, the cross test king. Ryan Sipes, if he shows up at a sprint enduro, I can guarantee he is winning the hefty majority of the cross test. And so that trickles down to the amateur classes as well. An amateur, let's say 40-plus A rider that has always raced motocross and is just now getting into woods, he can go out and gap you by 20 seconds in the cross test and then lose to you by 15 seconds in the woods, and he's still going to come out on top. So that's why you have this whole group of full gas following and these group of riders that just race full gas. And that's why going to the full gases is so cool, because registration is pretty much cut off around 300 riders for the big bikes. And what you see is more than half of those people are regulars that follow the series around. And because there's not 2,000 racers in a weekend or 1,500 racers in a weekend or 1,000 racers in a weekend, it's such a community. I mean, when you're doing staging, everyone's sitting out there, so everyone's sitting there talking and having fun. And then the whole point of sprint enduros is you race for 8 minutes, and then you go back to your RV for 45 minutes, and then you come race for 8 more minutes, and then go back to the rig for an hour. And so everyone gets to talking between tests. I mean, GNCC, you go out there 2 hours or 3 hours, whatever race you're doing, you go out there and that's it. At a sprint enduro, you have 12 different opportunities to go out, run the track, and then go find your buddy's rig. Like, hey man, I felt like I was losing some time in this back corner when it goes left and there's a right and it's an uphill. What line are you taking there? oh yeah, man, I was going over there and there's that big route to the left, so I was going just to the right of that big route and over the law. Like, it's cool because in between every single test, you can go find somebody and talk to them and go out and mountain bike the course between tests, go out and walk it, go out and look at the pros. So a line that you're struggling with, you can go out there at the start of one of the tests and see what the pros are doing through that line. Like, you may not want to walk up to Caleb Russell and ask him what line he's taking in a specific section, but good news, you can go out, sit in the woods, and wait for Caleb Russell to come through. There's a time that you know he's going to come through. You can watch him and the rest of the pro class and Pro 2 and Pro Am and see what lines everyone's taking, and that's going to help make you a better rider and help you find those better lines. And so it's just a really cool series. I like being a part of it, and I was glad to be back. And it was really cool to walk through the pits and see that Full Gas family and see all those familiar faces and even Hooper's literal family. I mean, his in-laws are working the races. His parents are working the races. His brother is working the races. His brother-in-law is working at the races. And just seeing all those people and having everyone back together, I don't know. It's cool for me because if you guys know me, I mean, I've talked about this on the show before. I go to all these races alone, whether the race is in Denver, 20 minutes away from me, or the race is in New York, 12 hours away from me. I go to most of these races alone, and I'm kind of doing it solo. So it's cool that the Full Gas is such a family because me coming in and announcing 3 years ago, I was kind of accepted with open arms. And so it's cool to be back around that and to be around all these people that just care. And, I mean, it's cool catching up with everyone and seeing how everyone's been doing. And I got a lot of people coming up like, hey, glad you're back. Glad to hear you back. Like, missed having you on the mic. Like, all that kind of stuff. And that really goes a long way. And it felt good to be able to walk through the pits, or even when people were coming up the stage and pull me to the side and tell me that. It was really cool to be back and really cool to see that Full Gas family and really cool to hear people's feedback in regards to all that. So anyway, that's my personal tangent about this weekend and the Full Gas Sprint Enduros. But one thing, going around talking to all these people and going around and hearing all the news, and that's the other cool thing about the Full Gas is you get to talk a lot more. It's not all spread out like a GNCC, and everyone is just there hanging out. And it's 2 days of racing, so by the time you get done racing the first day, I mean, we're done 4 or 5 o'clock, and then you just got the rest of the evening, just kind of hang out, walk around, go eat dinner with people. I mean, any given time there'll be 10 different dinners going on, so you can go kind of walk around and talk with everybody and make your rounds. But that being said, there's a lot that gets said and a lot that gets to be talked about at the Sprint Enduros, and it's kind of not like that at other rounds. Even at the end of the weekend, all the pro riders sitting there waiting on podiums, waiting on trophies, and they're all there at the same time, and they're all there. By the time we're doing podiums, everyone has already loaded their bikes up, they've changed their clothes, some of them even showered, and so it's really cool to look out and you see the whole pro podium, the whole women's pro podium, the whole Pro 2 and Pro Am podiums. All of these riders are just standing around drinking a beer and talking and having a good time, like just talking about the weekend, and everyone's just in one central spot and you can kind of talk to people. But yeah, over the weekend there's been a lot of stuff that has come out, and this is what I alluded to at the beginning of the show, is which direction OTP is going to go. Just going into this past season, I mean, I knew that Cody Webb signed with Sherco months before that came out. I mean, I think I found that out at Full Gas at the second to last round from people there. And it was one of those things where I didn't want to talk about it. And then same thing with Stu. I found out that Stu was going to Sherco as well. And it's one of those things that I never talked about and I never put out there because, for one, I didn't know if it was true. And for two, all those rider contracts are private. So I didn't want to ruin someone else's deal by them thinking that it's a breach of contract or the rider's going out talking. But a lot of times I find out this information from the factory side of it and not the rider side of it. So it's kind of one of those gray areas and tough lines that I don't want to get anybody in trouble, especially a rider that's looking to make a living riding a dirt bike. But most of the time it's not coming from the rider. It's coming from the other side of things. But That's why I never really want to put out any information. There's same things that I hear coming through the works for GNCC. I don't want to put that information out and be wrong, and I also don't want to throw anybody under the bus for finding out that information. But at the end of the day, you can't pinpoint anything back to one single person because there's two sides in every negotiation, and people are talking on both sides. So you never know where stuff originates from. So I think I'm tired of walking around eggshells. I think I'm tired of skating around what I hear and not mentioning it, because at the end of the day, I started this podcast to be off-road news and content. So if we're not sharing what we're getting, then what off-road news and content are we delivering you guys? I mean, if Sherco posts, hey, we hired Stu Baylor, and then a week later I come on this podcast and say, Sherco hired Stu Baylor, then it's not fun. You've already heard it. I'm not breaking any news. I'm just relaying something I read on the internet. So I hope this doesn't kill all my sources. Or the same thing like dealing with this debacle last weekend with the whole team tactics at the GNCC. I talked to every single person involved in that, and I was afraid to break that news. Like, I was legit afraid to do that podcast, and I didn't even break any news. Basically just talked about it and put it at the forefront and stated facts from every different angle without throwing anyone under the bus. But I was afraid to even do that because, one, I don't want people to give me information to be worried about their name coming out. I would never do that. I had one of the people that is very much so involved with that situation as far as being a witness and escalating it. They wanted to be named. He's like, dude, say my name. Tell everyone. Like, I don't care. Say my name. Tell them I'm the one that said this. Tell them. Say my name. Other than him, obviously everyone wants to kind of remain silent about what is going on, and so that's what I try to do. I try to gather the information, gather the facts, figure out how credible the information is. I would never deliver something that didn't come from a credible source. I will tell you guys that right now. I'm not gonna listen to old Johnny Smith riding 40 plus C-Class and what his opinion is. Like, if I do say something on this show, it's something that came from a very credible source that has reasonable knowledge or a reasonable way to know what they're saying. And so I think we're just going to start doing it. We're going to start spreading it around. And so I don't know if it's going to make people stop telling me things or if it's going to make people be like, oh, guess what I found out that you can talk about. But yeah, I don't know which way it's going to go. That was a really long build-up to probably not that much going on. But I did hear a couple things, so we might as well break it out there. First of all, I hear that Gas wants 2 XC1 riders for next year. I don't know what that means. I don't know who's going to be running the team. I don't know if it's still going to fall under the same umbrella as KTM and Husky. Obviously, KTM owns it now, and so it is ultimately under the same umbrella. But as far as team managers, I don't know if they will be running all 3 OEMs or what. But I do hear that Gas wants 2 XC1 riders next year. But I think for the first time, we're turning into a situation where there's like, I don't want to say more rides than riders, but there's plenty of XC1 rides right now in off-road, and I think that is awesome. I mean, you got Yamaha fielding a factory team, Husky with a factory team, KTM with a factory team, Kawasaki with a factory team, you got Sherco with a factory team, you got Beta with a factory team, you got Honda with, I'm pretty sure Phoenix Racing Honda is a factory team. If not, it's factory supported. Now you got Gas coming back. So Gas was in a couple years ago with Andrew DeLong, and I think Thorne Devlin was part of that whole thing too. But now you got Gas coming back with their new bikes, which is basically a red KTM. So you can basically get your KTM in orange, or you can get your KTM in white, or you can get your KTM in red. It's all the same bike. But so now they're coming back in. That is more support in off-road than I can ever remember having, which is awesome. It's awesome opportunities for these guys that are risking life and limb, and girls riding through these damn trees. So it's cool to see all the support, but with 2 XC1 rides on the line, I mean, pretty much everyone in that XC1 class is signed except for Stu Baylor and Corey Buttrick. Corey Buttrick went through a knee surgery as well. He's getting back in the swing of things. He's been racing a little bit of everything. He's been racing wherever he can race. So I'd love to see Corey get back on a ride. He had that Yamaha fill-in ride last year for a little bit, which I still don't like the way that worked out for Corey because Corey's such a good dude. But he's one of those guys that's still looking for a ride. But then you got the XC2 guys, and we don't know who's moving up from XC2. At least I don't know who's moving up from XC2. You got guys that have been in it for a few years that are in title contention right now. Guys like Johnny Gerard, guys like Craig DeLong, guys like Mike Wachowski, guys like Jonathan Johnson. I mean, when are these type of riders going to move up? I mean, I don't know if they're all planning on staying in XC2 next year, if they're planning on moving up to XC1, but with the gas ride available, especially two gas rides available, you got to think that if an XC2 rider has a choice between battling for an XC2 championship or moving on to XC1 with a factory ride, I think that's obviously a no-brainer with stepping up and taking the factory ride. Side note, I didn't even mean to talk about this. I just found out 2 days ago that GNCC pays $1,250 to win the overall. To win an overall, to go faster than anybody else on their track for 3 hours, you get $1,250. That is absolutely insane to me. And you want to know why that is absolutely insane to me? Because GNCC also, I did not plan to go down this rabbit hole, but I'm doing it right now for you and everyone listening. They posted their GNCC by the numbers, which first of all doesn't make sense to me. Why the hell you would post GNCC by the numbers? Because it's 1,384 race entries, 4,356 fans. You're posting all that in the middle of a pandemic. Like, I understand that we're back to racing and we're doing all this, but I don't even know what to say about this. Full gas is different. Full gas, there's no, I don't know. This whole pandemic thing, you can take it both ways. I mean, I personally am not worried about it. I mean, it's got a 99.7% survival rate. But the fact of the matter is like, I'm a safety guy for a living. I deal with safety in construction for a living. And so COVID has consumed my life this entire year with dealing with it. So I understand like that side, like the business side of it. And for you to post these numbers and say that you had 7,000 people at your race or 4,000 people or 6,000 people and in the middle of a pandemic from all these other different countries or different states and all these states have different travel bans. Like New York, they straight up say if you go to New York and you're from any of like 13 different states, you have to quarantine for 14 days. Now, granted, I don't know who's checking this, but it is a rule. And so I don't know. It's a bad look, I think. That's my personal opinion. If you are listening to this from that office in Morgantown, West Virginia, I'm not talking junk by any means. You got this safe to race program and you're trying to come back and figure out how to do things safe, and you got people, you're not doing podiums because you don't want to look bad in the public eye and you don't want people on camera not social distancing, and then you post something about having 5,000 people in a field from 15 different states all drinking out of the same moonshine containers. At least I saw some of that happen in this past weekend, but I don't know. I don't get it. But anyway, the whole point of this is they, by the numbers for high voltage GNCC, 1,384 total entries, 4,356 race fans. So if you do 4,356 fans through the gate at $20 a pop, that is $87,120. And then you got, I need to remember that, $87,120. And then you got 1,384 riders at $50 for an entry fee. That's $69,200. $69,200 plus, what did I say? $82,120. $82,120. $151,320 just off of gate fees and entry fees for their high voltage by the numbers. $151,000, $151,320. And granted, there's a lot of costs that go into racing, a lot of costs that go into racing that you will not even think about. From the portage on to paying the ambulance $250 an hour just to sit there all day long, to the whole track crew that's there a week before and a week after. And then you got to pay for the internet for Racer TV that they're broadcasting on because they're using satellite internet. And then you got to pay all the Racer TV camera people. And you got to pay the people behind the scenes. You got to pay the announcers. You got to pay people working sign up. You got to pay people working scoring. You got to pay to get all the trucks there. You got to pull all the equipment there. You got to pull the GNCC trailers there. You got to put gas in all the machines throughout the weekend. There's a lot of costs that go into it. But just off of gate fees and entry fees, that's $151,320. That's not to mention t-shirts that you're selling. I'm pretty sure all the food vendors have to give up a cut of what they make. And if they don't have to give up a cut of what they make, then they're paying thousands of dollars to be there just to get a spot there. Same thing to get something on vendor row. It's thousands of dollars, and it may not be thousands, but it is over $1,000 just around, or it's over $1,000 to have a vendor booth set up. They got vendor row with all that stuff down there. So, I mean, you got to keep in mind they're making money off of all that. They're making money off of transponders. At minimum, it's $10 a transponder for all 1,300 of those people. And to win an overall, you get paid $1,250. I announced a local race that had, I think, 60 people in it, and they gave away $1,500 for the winner. It's just, I don't know. That blew my mind. And that's public knowledge. That's on their website. I mean, you go to rider services and go to Pro Purse, and it tells you exactly what the Pro Purse is. And I know these guys are making money from their manufacturers. They're making contingency money and they're making contracted win money, but I just can't believe the GNCC payout is $1,250. And same thing, I'm not talking junk by any means. I'm just using their numbers that are on their website, that from the race numbers to the Pro Purse numbers, and I think it's crazy. But I guess that's why I don't get paid to think. Anywho, so yeah, back to the main thing. So Gas, 2 XC1 riders. I also heard that Stu could be one of those riders. I mean, I know Stu has been quoted as saying that he would not ride anything that's not a Husky, a KTM, or now a Gas. Obviously, with Gas coming back, look at KTM. KTM's got a full truck. Obviously, Caleb will not be back at the GNCCs next year. Caleb will be racing Sprint Enduros next year, which he has said publicly. And from what I've heard, he'll be racing outdoors next year too. So Caleb will still have something to do with the KTM truck, racing full gas and racing pro motocross. But look at the rest of the boys. They got Josh Toth, which after last weekend, this is Toth's last contracted year. We'll see what happens with Josh Toth. I know how my opinions would be if I was Josh Toth, but it's also the premier race team in off-road. It's the premier race team in any discipline of dirt bike racing. Red Bull KTM, that's the premier. So he could be re-signing with them. So anyway, you'd have Josh Toth, Ben Kelly, you got Jesse Ansley working his way up through there. You got Johnny Gerard, who's been lighting the damn world on fire here lately. I know I'm missing somebody. They got somebody else that they're helping. But anyway, so those are 4 young up-and-coming riders. So KTM is pretty well set. Husky announced that they re-signed Thad Duvall. They re-signed Trevor Bollinger. And they still got Craig DeLong on their team right now. So Husky's pretty well full up. And now you got Gas coming in saying that they want to put 2 XC1 riders on a bike. The obvious choice is Stu Baylor. I mean, I don't see anywhere else that Stu goes besides factory gas next year. That is just my opinion. I don't see why. I'd be interested in knowing what actually happened between the Sherco deal and the Sherco fallout. I know that Stu had knee surgery, and I know that had something to do with it at the end of the day. I mean, Stu's been public about what's going on with that and how he hasn't been able to ride, and he's been helping out at the GNCC's announcing and everything. But I'd be interested in knowing what happened with that because Sherco was a brand stepping into this for the first time into the premier class at GNCC. Stu had the Georgia race all but one. He was 2 corners away from delivering on a platter Sherco's first win in their third attempt ever with basically a stock bike. I mean, Stu was helping develop that bike. Stu is a fan favorite rider. Stu has one of the biggest followings of any other rider in our sport. Stu has probably one of the most fans of everyone in our sport. I mean, look at every GNCC round going after this. There's signs lining the entries to GNCC saying, give Stu a ride, give Stu a ride, give Stu a ride. Stu deserves a ride. So if you're Sherco and you got one of the most popular riders in the sport, I don't see why you cut ties with him like that and do it publicly, especially when you're on the verge of race wins. And I mean, even Grant has been on the podium, putting a Sherco on podiums. And that's his brother. I mean, they signed both the brothers. So I don't know what exactly happened in that whole thing. I don't want to speculate what exactly happened in that whole thing. But whatever happened, I just don't get why it wasn't enough for Sherco to sit back and figure out a way around it and get behind their rider. Because you look at Kawasaki since they came back. 3 years ago, you pull up to a GNCC, I would challenge you to find more than 5 Kawasaki's out of 1,000 riders. You wouldn't do it. I don't think you would do it. Now you go there and you see just as much Cowies almost as you see damn Yamahas or Hondas or anything else. Like, there's green bikes everywhere. And it's because they made that push and people like Strang and people like Jordan Ashburn. And same thing, I don't know if there's actually more Shercos in the woods this year or if I just noticed them more because of the Baylor boys. But I have noticed unequivocally more Shercos in the woods this year. And I even looked I was on Sherco's website looking at all their different models and trying to figure out which Sherco I would want to ride. And trying to find out prices and trying to find out Sherco dealers and trying to find out availability of parts and looking into buying a Sherco. And if Stu Baylor wasn't there, that would have never happened. If Stu Baylor didn't almost win a race on one, that would have never happened. And if that's just me, then there's got to be a ton of other people out there that are doing the same exact thing and on the verge of giving Sherco money because of Stu Baylor. Like, Stu Baylor was the one riding for them and doing good on their bikes. I don't get it. But anyway, that whole hype train and everything that he did, I think he can do that same thing for Gas, and I think that would be an excellent way for Gas to make a splash when they come back because they're not going to have the growing pains that Sherco is going through right now. They're not going to have problems where they don't have parts to go on their factory race machines. It's a KTM chassis. It's built on the KTM platform. They're going to have all of that rider development and that research team that's behind KTM and Husky. They're going to have that out of the gate. They're not going to show up without a big tank. They're not going to show up without a dry brake on that big tank. They're not going to blow out a fuel pump and not have a fuel pump on deck to go in it. They're not going to have a hole in the air box that a mechanic forgets to plug and then they DNF a race because of it. They're not going to have electrical issues. They're going to be an established bike on an established platform that has won the last 7 GNCC championships in a row. Actually, more than that, 8, because I think Charlie won it the year before Caleb. And I think Strang won it the year before that. But they're going to have all of that backing. They're going to have everything good to go from the beginning. And Stu Baylor has ridden one bike since he was a toddler, and that was a KTM. And so he's going to jump right back on that bike, and he's going to be right at home, and he's going to pick up right where he left off, and he's going to be challenging for races wins. I mean, Thad will be back, Trevor will be back, and all those guys will be back. Strang will be back. All these guys will be back, but Stu will no doubt be battling for race wins, and it'll be on a bike that he would be comfortable with on that gas. And I know you guys saw the story today of Stu Baylor riding a Husky. I wouldn't look too far depth into that. Like I said, Husky's got 3 contracted riders right now. I think that was a more along the lines of another rider's practice bike or race bike that was being left at Stu Baylor's, and Stu just wanted to get out and ride and see how his knee was going and see how he was feeling and see how he would do. So I don't think it's anything more than that. I don't think that's anything worth looking into. I think he just had a Husky laying around the house and jumped on it and decided to spin a couple laps. The other thing that I heard about this weekend that I think is really weird was there's a rumor going around that GNCC is not going to run the rest of their series. And when I hear this, I immediately laugh it off. Even from the person that told me. They would not be saying this without a very good understanding and a very good knowledge that it's possible. And even when they told me, I was like, dude, no, absolutely not. Like, I don't even want to hear that. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But then I heard it from like 4 or 5 other people that have nothing to, like, that are completely separate ends of the spectrum and why they got this information or where they heard that information from. But the point is that there is a lot of very credible people that are saying that GNCC might not run the rest of their season, citing it on COVID flaring back up and states closing back down. Like North Carolina, for instance, we went to a 3-phase reopening progress. We made it to phase 2, and now we're talking about going into phase 1, going back and locking stuff down more than it is right now. And I know a lot of different states are in that same boat. So maybe they have some information that we don't know yet, or maybe they're not, or they're concerned about it, or maybe they posted that they had 5,000 people at their last race and they're like broadcasting how many people are at these things from how many different states. I don't know. Regardless of the fact of why it may be happening, it just blows my mind that it's going around that there's even a possibility that it could happen. And like I mentioned, it's from sources that have good information to know or to hear things like that. So I don't see why it would happen. I don't see them losing out on 4 rounds of racing and like their deal at Snowshoe and like sponsorship dollars for each round. That's another thing, talking about the numbers. I didn't even think about that. The sponsors, like all the sponsors of the series, they pay big money to be sponsors of that series, and they pay their pros $1,250 to win the whole thing. But yeah, I don't see a world where they don't run the last 4 races of the year. It doesn't make sense to me, but it is coming out. And what makes even less sense is that they announced their pro motocross schedule, and then they come out and there's these rumors about not racing GNCC. So, I don't know. It's interesting because I would have never thought that. But then again, I don't run a series as big as they are or a company as big as they are. So, they've got to have a reason to be even considering not running it if that is a possibility. And so yeah, I have no idea what that reason would be, but that is the rumor going around right now that they might not run the last 4 rounds. If that does happen and they still stick with this pro motocross schedule that they came out with, this was Caleb Russell's last year. Caleb Russell is leading the points right now. If they nip the season in the bud right now and give Caleb the championship, well, the first round of pro motocross is the weekend after Loretta Lynn's amateur national motocross, and then pro motocross is the next weekend at Loretta Lynn's. Does Caleb go ahead and make that transition and race all of pro outdoors this year? We don't know, but with this speculation coming out, it's certainly a possibility, and I guess we're not going to know until it all unfolds right in front of our faces, but that's about 2 or 3 weeks away. So just something to keep an eye on. I think that's all I got for as far as the rumors are concerned. Let's get into some full gas racing. We're almost an hour into this podcast and finally getting into the point of the podcast. It was awesome to be back full gas racing. The first 3 tests of the day were won by Caleb Russell, but I think they were won by 0.3, 0.2, and 0.5 of a second. So tenths of a second separating Caleb Russell and Josh Strang in these first few tests. And that was just the 3 tests that Caleb won. Strang won the 4th test, which was the second enduro test, and he ended up winning the final enduro test. So Strang ended up winning 2 out of 3 enduro tests on the day. But even when Strang won the 4th test of the day, which is the second enduro test, he only won it by like 0.2 of a second, less than 0.2 of a second. So these dudes were right on top of each other the whole time. And if you haven't been to a sprint enduro, they take off 15 seconds apart. So 15 seconds is enough to not see the person in front of you. So that means they're taking off on these courses and they are riding these 3-mile long courses as fast as humanly possible whizzing their bodies of flesh right by these trees, going Mach 12 through the woods, and finishing these tests. Out of all the lines you could choose, out of all the rocks you could hit, the roots you could hit, the trees you could hit, out of all of that, they are finishing all these tests within tenths of a second of each other every single time. But the way the weekend I can't talk. The way the weekend shook out is that Caleb Russell took the first 3 test wins of day number 1. Josh Strang took the 4th test win of day number 1. Caleb won the cross test. So Caleb, actually, am I going crazy? No. I was right. So Caleb won the first 3 tests of the day. Strang won the second enduro test. Caleb won the next cross test, and then Strang won the next enduro test. So Caleb wins 3 straight tests in a row, 2 cross tests and an enduro test, and then he wins the final cross test. Strang goes 2-2-2, and then gets a win on the enduro, second in the cross test, win on the enduro of the last one of the day. And I know that's confusing to keep up with, but basically what you need to take away from it is that they were within tenths of a second throughout this whole entire thing. So Caleb wins the first 3 by tenths of a second. Strang wins the 4th one by tenths of a second. Caleb wins the 5th one. I think Caleb might have won that one by a second or something like that. But then they go into the final test of day number 1, and Caleb crashes right towards the end of the enduro test. It's the final enduro test of the day. Caleb has a lead. He's led the entire day up until that point. Granted, it wasn't by much, but he was the first one to every test, so he got a clear view, no dust or anything like that. But it was like, I think it was within like a half a mile of the finish. Caleb goes down in the woods. Strang said that he didn't see him go down, but Strang did tell me that he saw where Caleb was getting up and where he crashed at. Fast forward, that gives Strang the last test win by about 5 seconds. So you gotta think 5 tests, less than tenths of a second away from each other, and then all of a sudden gaps 5 seconds on that last one. That gives Strang the day 1 overall win. So Caleb goes down, gives Strang the win on day 1. Both the days are scored separately as far as the pro points are concerned. So that means Strang got the full 25 points for day 1, and Caleb got 20 for second place, and which is a big deal, especially with how much pressure Strang has been putting on Caleb in every series here lately. Strang has been on a damn roll, and I think Caleb's not used to having that pressure coming from Strang. And so yeah, that was cool to see that the racing was so freaking close, and it came down to just one mistake. And that's the thing, when you're racing the clock, mistakes are what makes all the difference in the world, especially something where you could give up 5 seconds potentially in a race where you're winning by less than a second every single test. You would think that. And then they come out day 2 on Sunday, which, first of all, Johnny Gerard, we're going to talk about Pro 2 in a second, but Johnny Gerard freaking takes the first cross test win of the day on day 2 on his 250F. Fastest time of the day. It's the first cross test out there. Johnny G is on a 250F. He grabs the win. Caleb gets 3rd place in that first cross test. So I don't know if he went down. I guess I could look at that. Let me try to look at that cross test real quick. So Caleb gets 3rd, and he was 5 seconds back off of Strang. So it would lead you to believe that Caleb went down or made a pretty costly mistake in the first cross test of day 2, because he was 5 seconds off of Strang's pace. But comes out in the enduro test, and I'm sitting there announcing. I'm still announcing Pro-Am by the time the Pro Riders are finishing. And like I said, they take off 15 seconds apart. Well, I see Strang come out of the woods, and then I see Lane Michael come out of the woods, and there's a hill coming down out of the woods that you can see from scoring. And before Lane Michael is even at the bottom of the hill, Caleb Russell is popping out of the hill. I was like, what in the world is going on? I was like, dude, Lane must have fallen. Like, Lane must have went down, and now Caleb's all over him. They come through. Caleb looked like he was riding pissed off. He was a damn man on a mission. He came through scoring on Lane's rear tire. Turns out Lane didn't fall. Nothing happened with Lane. Caleb Russell won that test by 10 flipping seconds. The first Enduro test of day 2, Caleb won by 10 seconds. 10 seconds faster than Josh Strang on the Enduro test in day number 2. Second test of the day. And then you got to think, when this is coming down to less of a second between test wins, Strang wins day 1 by 5 seconds, and now all of a sudden you gap him by 10 seconds, then you're just in maintain mode. Same thing we were talking about with the Ryan Sipes theory earlier. Caleb, 10 seconds ahead on the day, knows that he's 4 seconds ahead on the weekend because he lost by 6 seconds the day before. Well, now you got 4 seconds to play with, so I don't have to beat Strang by 4 seconds. I just have to be within a second of him for the rest of every test, and we're good. And so I think he used that big gap there to manage the rest of his race and manage the rest of his weekend and manage the end result, which the end result was Caleb and Strang swapping, or I guess sharing test victories. Actually, no, Strang took 3 test wins in day number 2, and Caleb took 2, and then Johnny took 1. Johnny Gerard took 1. So at the end of the day, Caleb, as I mentioned, managed his race. He's got the race IQ that is unmatched. No one has the race IQ of Caleb. No one knows how to manage a race better than Caleb, and that's why he's won 7 championships in a row, and he is the only person to ever win multiple full gas championships. He won last year. He won the first year. He's the first ever 2-time Sprint Enduro champion, and he shows why right here. He manages the race, and he grabs the win. Comes out on top. He won round 1. He wins round 2. He extends his point lead, but Strang did get in there and steal the day away from him, which was cool to see. But, yeah, tight battles. Tight battles between these two. Every weekend, GNCC and full gas, tight battles. Another good battle going back and forth was Lane Michael and Jordan Ashburn. I mean, those two guys were close all weekend long. The same thing as Strang and Caleb being within a second of each other and swapping test wins back and forth. That was the story of the weekend with Lane Michael and Jordan Ashburn. Both of them were on rails. Both of them were riding good, and both of them were finishing within a second of each other. And so that third place spot swapped around quite a bit, and they were in contention for the podium quite a bit between the two of them. They were a few seconds off of Caleb and Josh's pace, but they had their own battle going on for third. Liam Draper, he also had some good rides. He was battling up there. He's racing that Pro 1 class, so he was trying to get in the mix as well. He was riding good, solid top 10 overall. Same thing with Corey Buttrick. Corey Buttrick riding real good. He's still testing that knee back and getting things underneath him, and he's kind of doing things on his own right now, so I'm sure that definitely plays a role into it. I mean, all these other riders, they have prep bikes. They have a bike just for full gas, and I think right now Corey's using the same bike for everything and just kind of piecing it together and doing what he can. Speaking of which, I thought it was funny. Strang, he was talking to me before the race and talking about his bike. He's like, well, hell, I haven't touched it since February when we thought we were going to the next one. But he's like, I prepped it up for the second round that was supposed to happen in February. And he's like, I went to go pick my bike up. He's like, I haven't touched my full gas bike. He's like, I went to go look at it, and I couldn't remember if I prepped it or not. But he's like, I saw there was new tires on it. So he's like, I think I prepped it. I don't know. Which I just thought was funny. He's like, I think I prepped it. We'll see how it goes. He's like, when I was rolling in the trailer, I started it, and it started. So it should be good to go. And so that's what he came into the weekend on. But grabbed a day 1 win with it. So I guess it worked out. Pro 2, definitely a tight class between those guys. It was basically the top 3 were the same riders in a row at the first round, except Lyndon Snodgrass was here from Australia at that first round. Lyndon Snodgrass almost got the overall podium at round 1. He was running second overall there for a while, but he grabbed the Pro 2 win at round number 1. Lyndon is currently trapped as a prisoner of Australia. I guess all of Australia is locked down right now. Strang was saying that Lyndon State is shut down to the point where there's policemen at the damn borders not letting anyone in or out. And so Lyndon's not able to make it back over here. But when Lyndon won the first round, Johnny Gerard had second, and then Ben Nelko had third, and then Jesse Ainsley had fourth. And this weekend, basically you take Lyndon out of the equation, and that was the way they finished. Johnny Gerard took the win. Ben Nelko got second. and Jesse Ainsley got third. Johnny Gerard, we mentioned he got an overall test win, first test of the day on day number 2. And Ben Nelko ended up getting the Pro 2 win in test number 2. Yeah, I just said test number 1, day number 2 for Johnny getting that overall win. Day number 2, test number 2, Ben Nelko won Pro 2 in the first Woods loop of the day. So the first Enduro loop of day 2, Ben Nelko grabbed that win. That would be the only test win out of 12 that Johnny G didn't get. So Johnny, 11 for 12 on the weekend as far as cross test, or as far as test wins in Pro 2. He won 11 out of 12 of them. Ben Nelko stole one Enduro test win from him on day number 2. And Jesse Ainsley was right there. They were battling back and forth. RJ Cook is racing that Pro 2 class this year. He was riding really good as well. But that's the way Pro 2 shook out. Pro-Am went back and forth a lot as well. Pro-Am actually came down to the wire. It was decided on the final test of the day. JT Baker, he's a works rider from what I understand. He rides for Factory Sherco. He was out here from California and racing with us. And Cole Madison is fast. Cole Madison's got some damn sprint speed. He won the first round at GTR, which Cole is definitely no stranger to GTR, but Cole won the first round down there, and this weekend he had his hands full with JT Baker. They traded wins back and forth pretty much the whole entire weekend. They were right next to each other the whole entire weekend, and it came down to the final test, and I think JT Baker got the win by about a second and a half. Cole came through visibly upset. I think something happened. He said he told me he threw it away on that final test. I'm not sure what happened. I think, if I remember correctly, I think he said he hit a tree and it bent a handguard into his clutch lever, and then he had to basically kick it to break his clutch lever loose to be able to use it. It was something to that effect, but yeah, that one came down to the wire, but JT Baker ended up taking the win. And then Anson Maloney, who is another California kid, another California rider, he raced Pro-Am, and he got third, which Anson Maloney, he's not a small guy. He's doing it for us big boys out there, and he's really fast for a big boy. He was out there, I mean, granted, he's not huge or nothing, but he's a big boy, and he was out there ripping. He was going real fast. And so he gets third place in Pro-Am. And then women's pro class, Taylor Jones took the win. Rachel Archer got second, and Brandy Richards got third. But that is definitely one of those cases, which this is why I feel bad about talking about bad medicine and not being able to talk about it, because I don't know what the hell happened because I wasn't there. This is the exact reason why, because if you look through these scoring things and you see Taylor Jones wins, Rachel Archer second, and Brandy Richards in third, you're like, oh, dang, good for them. But that's not the case. Brandy Richards took 2 out of 3 of the first 3 test wins of the day. I think she won both cross tests, I want to say, and was real close in the enduro test. I think she had the lead going into the 4th test of the day. And in the 4th test, we're sitting there waiting. Taylor comes by, Rachel comes by, and then all of a sudden our Vet A riders start coming by. So we start seeing Vet A coming in, and we're like, I asked Hooper's yo, did you see Brandy come in? He's like, I didn't see Brandy come in. And nobody else saw Brandy come in. We checked scoring. Brandy never came in. And we have a sweep rider that rode pretty much the whole track and said that they didn't see her. And then as Open A riders, that's what it was, Open A riders, because Matusik and them were coming by. So as Open A riders were coming in, we're asking them, hey, did you see Brandy Richards? Did you see a rider down out there? Everyone's saying no. No one saw her. The sweep rider didn't see her. Open A riders didn't see her. Taylor didn't see her. Taylor saw, because Brandy was leading the day, so she was first on the track. Taylor said that she saw some dust and some dirt, but never saw Brandy. What ended up happening is Brandy got in a high-speed crash and basically slid off the side of a damn mountain and down a ravine and disappeared, and no one could even see her. And then when our sweep rider finally did find her, she was dazed and out of it. And to my knowledge, the last I heard is she never knew where she crashed. She didn't know what happened. She didn't know where she crashed. She didn't know how she crashed. And I think she hurt her hip. And obviously I think she hit her head. And was just kind of out of it. So she didn't race the rest of day 1. But Brandy Richards is on that defending gold medalist women's trophy team from the ISDE this year. And she led, I think, 5 days of the 6 days Enduro this year. She led the women's overall. She's fast. She's from Arizona, Lake Havasu City, and she was out here racing with us. So it was cool to see her because Taylor's been untouched in these sprint enduros. I mean, there's been like Mackenzie Tricker's taking some wins here and there. I think Becca Sheets might have got one here and there. But Taylor, for the last 3 years, has dominated. And Taylor is a multiple-time ISDE gold medalist team champion, and Taylor is a multi-time individual, like, overall women's world champion at the ISDE. No one really touches her at these things. So to see Brandy come out here and do what she was doing was absolutely impressive, especially at the level that these women's pro classes are riding these days. So I was really looking forward to see how that battle shook out. Unfortunately, that ended a little bit early because Brandy got in that gnarly wreck. She didn't race the rest of the day on day 1, but she ended up coming back out and racing day 2, and she ended up getting some test wins in day 2. So she stole some test wins in day 2, even after being all banged up and stuff in day number 1. And then when I called her up to the podium at the end of the weekend to get her checked for 3rd, she was like limping. She was limping pretty bad coming up. So even riding through that pain, she was able to get some test wins on day 2, which I think is absolutely awesome. And I think the level of competition in that women's class is absolutely awesome. But, yeah, so that is basically how the Sprint Enduro shook out. It was cool to see everyone. Glad to see everyone. You can check out the highlight video, hear my wonderful voice, even though you've been listening to it for an hour and 6 minutes. If you've made it this far, I salute you. I thank you. I appreciate you. Let me know if you have any questions or comments about the drama, about the rumors, about the races, about anything. Thanks, as always, for listening. Thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And I hope you stuck by this long. I'd be super stoked if you did. But that's going to wrap up the show. Remember, check out armorgraphics.com or follow them at Armor Graphics. Follow On the Pipe Podcast because we're badass. If you like the show, tell a friend. If you enjoyed it, please tell a friend. Let them know that they need to be listening to OTP because we might just be breaking all the damn news we can get our hands on from here going forward. So, onthepipepodcast.com, at onthepipepodcast. I'm your host, as always, Tyler Shepperson. You can follow me at tshep704, TSHEP704. That's my personal account. Other than that, go check out Full Gas Enduro at Full Gas Enduro or sprintenduro.com. And go check out the highlight video that Mason Rader made and I voiced over. And other than that, I hope you all have a wonderful Wednesday. Because you're probably listening to this on a Wednesday. Because OTP Tuesdays comes out on Wednesdays. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll catch you next week. Bye.